Please remain seated. The show will begin in 3, 2...
Like a Hellcat.
I don't know for sure how it happened, but I started feeling terribly ill sometime after my last encounter with Clay, the night custodian. I must have suffered a heat stroke and had a bad migraine, and I remember feeling dizzy and a bit nauseous. So I was sent back home to my apartment, and I was bedridden for a couple weeks. During that time, the first 2 days, I visited the doctor's office, and after several tests were ran, they found nothing wrong with me. Nothing serious, that is. It could be that I was very fatigued, having lacked proper sleep, and simply needed to stay hydrated. So I stayed in bed for a long period of time, trying to get as much rest as possible. But come that first week on a Wednesday evening, that's when the night terrors came into play. The nightmares started out simply with me waking up at 1:45, the same time that Madeline supposedly had died, after she shortly had vanished without a trace. I would wake up in the Haunted Mansion ride, in the one room where the stretch portraits are located, and only a dim light above would flicker. I would stare at those paintings of some of the most famous ghosts that allegedly are supposed to be haunting the attraction. One of them I recognized immediately. Constance Hatchaway as an old woman sitting on a tombstone of one of her 5 deceased husbands, as she holds a rose, and the carved image on the tombstone has an axe lodged in its skull. There was something else about that portrait that was off, and it was reoccurring. Whenever there was a lightning flash, Constance in the portrait would change her head position. At first, she would just be staring straight ahead like normal, but when the first lightning strike hit, her head turned to the right, facing the nearest window, and she was pointing at something, but what it was I didn't know. I would walk towards the window, but I would see nothing but pitch blackness. Then my nose would bleed and I would feel a sharp pain in my chest. I would wake up. This would happen repeatedly till the 4th night. The nightmares progressively and gradually got worse. The 4th night, Constance would be staring at me again, but her face looked angry and sad at the same time, tears of blood streaming down her cheeks as her eyes glared with murderous intent. All the other portraits around her were morphed, misshapen in grotesque forms. Their eyes were ripped out and their jaws were dropped to give out silent screams of torment. Then some unseen force had ripped the portrait of Constance off the wall, and the portrait had begun to levitate towards my direction. I tried to scream but couldn't. I couldn't even find the words or rationalize what I was seeing. My body was paralyzed with fear, and my ears were drowning in the sound of Constance's evil laughter, piercing my eardrums. It was agonizingly painful. Then whispers formed all around me. A familiar chant followed. Madeline wants your body. Madeline wants your life. You can try to run, but she's never far behind. She'll cut out your heart and gouge out your eyes. All she ever wanted was to be someone's wife. Then the clock would strike midnight, and Madeline would appear, holding the axe in her hands. She seemed remorseful, but her expression changed to resentment. That's when she spoke, her voice disembodied, a chilling echo from the grave.
All these years, many mocked me, treated me as nothing more than a joke. And I won't be replaced. Find my body, so that I may find peace. I know who you are. Just know I'm always watching. Always. Always watching.
The ghost of Madeline had repeated, before slowly fading away into the darkness. For 2 weeks, the nightmares came back constantly. Some of them I don't remember as well as others, but they have plagued me. It all played repeatedly, like the same old song. Then the final night. On the second week before I returned to work, everything that happened in the other dreams followed the same pattern. But this one I analyzed my surroundings more carefully. I looked back to the window and noticed a bookcase. A glowing orb appeared suddenly and led me to the bookcase. One brown leather book had fallen off the shelf. It was a diary. It had Madeline's initials on the front cover. I then woke up and in my hands, as I sprung out of bed, I tightly clutched the diary. I took it to work with me the next day. I felt better but still a bit puzzled, and I wasn't sure what my next step would be. I was on my lunch break at my usual spot, chilling on the same park bench within the back alley, enjoying the serenity as I read through the pages of Madeline's diary. Some of it was rather cheerful, but being 30 pages in, it got dark and graphic pretty quick. This entry was written just 7 days before the Haunted Mansion's grand opening in 1969. He finally proposed to me, and now that he and I are alone, we can discuss plans to move away together. I just need to finish my performance at the grand opening, and I'll meet with him in private. My bags are packed, and he'll be waiting for me like he promised. Who is he? Was Madeline actually going to elope? Wait a minute, I thought. Clyde mentioned before that she begged him to come see her the night of the grand opening. Was Clyde her fiancé? After my lunch break, I went back to the Haunted Mansion to continue my maintenance check on one section of the ride, the dining area with the dancing ghosts. But upon entering the main entry hall with the stretch portraits, I noticed something strange. The portrait of Constance Hatchaway, sitting on her husband George's tombstone, her head was hung low as if staring at the ground. Her right index finger pointed downward, and I reluctantly approached the portrait, examining it more closely. My eyes followed the finger to a loose tile in front of me on the marble floor. I knelt down and pried the tile off, setting it aside. I shined my flashlight inside the hole. I then reached my hand in and took out a small wooden box. I decided to place it inside my bag before placing the tile back where it was before heading to the dining room area. A lot of thoughts swam around in my brain, questions surfacing about my finding of the box inside the tile floor. Who did it belong to? And why was it put there? Was someone leaving me a clue to help solve the mystery of Madeline's disappearance and rumored dead body said to be somewhere located on the ride? I then overheard an argument between Clyde the night custodian and my manager, Sean.
Listen here, boy. I know you've been lying and sneaking around this place all hours of the night. You've been following me around as well. I know it's you who was behind the last incident with the power getting cut during the ride's operation.
Are you crazy, Clyde? I wasn't even on the clock 2 nights ago. And how do I know you haven't staged any of those insane stunts with things toppling over in the dining area and the projections glitching out constantly? And care to explain the fresh blood trail I found leading all the way to the attic scene?
Huh? What blood trail?
Don't play dumb with me, Clyde. I swear you and your stupid childish pranks have gotten out of hand. The guests have complained about seeing bloody handprints and messages written in the public restrooms.
I checked all the machinery thoroughly and did all the diagnostics. Every test came back with results that were normal before the attraction even opened. I especially haven't received any complaints about the cleanliness of the restrooms. I would never even try to scare the guests, let alone try to ruin their ride experience, Sean.
Really? Then how would you explain all these occurrences, Clyde?
It's Madeline, don't you get it, boy? She's not going to stop until she gets justice for her death.
Ugh. Clyde, it's madness. Ghosts don't exist. I worked hard to get this promotion, and the executives have been breathing down my neck, and I've given you tons of slack. This is your last warning. If there is one more incident tonight during roid operations, I'll be left with no choice but to relieve you of your duties here permanently. Clyde slammed the back door behind him as he exited furiously. Clyde wouldn't have done those things. I confronted Sean and let him have it. At this point, I didn't care about getting fired. Clyde is a senile old man, Sean scolded, and I don't need proof to confirm my suspicions. And quite frankly, I don't like your tone. Sean, Clyde isn't behind any of this. Madeline's ghost is real. I've seen her and so have you. Why deny there's something paranormal going on now? I'm not sure what I really saw, but I know Clyde is responsible. He's not only the night custodian, but my veteran tech guy. But I trust you more than him to handle the maintenance of the machinery till further notice. I'll have him put on probation for a month, and he'll have to earn my trust again if he wants to set foot back in this building. Sean, don't you think that's a bit drastic? It's the way it has to be. I'm sorry. With that, he walked away. I chased after Clyde, but he was nowhere to be seen. Days turned to weeks, and Clyde never came back to the park. Huge spikes of paranormal activity transpired due to his absence, and I had reason to believe even now that Madeline's ghost was really angry about that. She became more violent towards the mansion staff, and the one who was a target of her rage the most was Sean the manager. And little did he know, at the time he would become a believer. I remember sitting in the break room on a rainy day, and it was around 3 p.m. I was drinking a bottled root beer and eating a ham sandwich when I heard a blood-curdling scream. It was Sean. I quickly ran out the door, and I followed the commotion to the main entry hall. What I saw, still to this day, cannot be erased from my memory. Sean was covered in bloody gashes, his clothing torn, and he was drooling and foaming at the mouth. His left leg was severed off, his eyes bulging wide. Beside him was a bloody axe. I called 911 and he was admitted to the hospital. I was sent home and later received a call from the police that Sean would be transferred to the local mental asylum. It was officially confirmed that he was merely a danger to himself and others. According to the court order, Sean had to stay in solitary confinement and have little to no contact, in exception to receiving meals and taking prescription meds. He could only have supervised visits. I was his only visitor. Little by little, his sanity faded. He lost his job, his house, his fiancée. He became a vegetable, eventually losing any consciousness of a normal person, only being able to speak broken English to hardly speaking at all. He began drawing weird, creepy shit and messages on the cement wall in his own blood. One message on the wall was awfully similar to the chanting I heard frequently, even in my dreams. But this was far more disturbing. It read, "Madeline took over my body. Madeline ruined my life. She'll come after you next. Time to say goodbye."